Can I say, visually it was beautiful. I mean, absolutely beautiful going around the country, forgetting the content and the
travelogue.
Yeah, because I had so little money, that was worried that it would look...
It was stunning. I mean,
especially, I was forgetting that the main aim was to show to other people in other countries, so to put it as a portrayal of Britain as well was very good, and the different regions too. Yeah, and I think that worked very well.
Yeah. On the subject of people receiving...
People up here as well, just so you...
Oh, yes. Sorry, yes, I know.
All right.
Okay, well,
I just wanted to ask, have you been on the receiving end of much abuse as a result of having made it?
Oh, loads. I don't look at it at all. But my executive producer and DOP, Don McVeigh, I couldn't have done it without him, because I just made another film which I put all my savings into and haven't got back. And I was trying to get other things off the ground, and the last thing I wanted to do was spend more money, which I have done of my own, borrowed money, to make another film. So I said to Don, I said, how much, if you gave me 10 days of your work, how much will you charge me? He said, what's it for? And I told him, and he said, nothing. I won't charge you anything. And so we started. But Don reads all this out to me. I keep saying, Don, I don't want to know. And he goes, yes, but you should know this person. And this is what this person said. And it would seem that the attacks are, we've voted, this is democracy, get over it. And the other thing, it's all attacks, nobody can come up. He said there was one man, and we've had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands. And he said there was one man who came up with something quite logical, and he engages with them until he gets fed up and then blocks them. But I mean, so many of them, he said, they're going on he teases them all about the immigration, and it's extraordinary how much so many people seem to be affected like that. And he winds them up and says, yes, it's great that we're not going to get all those terrible European people. He said, now what we'll get is a lot more people from Africa, China, because they go, Matty, why is that? So yeah, I think that's powerful. Of course, I mean, Patience Wheatcroft, who I've known for 35 years or something, I mean, when she wrote the piece for The Guardian, she got the most horrific emails. She said that the things they wanted to do to every orifice, she couldn't believe it was possible. So
you've obviously been around a while. Do you think that's far worse now post-Brexit? I know it's partly the technology, the social media stuff wasn't as prevalent, but it has been going long enough to compare social media abuse before and after Brexit. I mean, is it another example of how Brexit has released this hate?
Oh yes, and it is easier.
But it wasn't so prevalent before, was it? Even though it was fairly easy there. Do you think or not?
There was quite a bit of it, but not in the same. It's given them an excuse.
Yeah.
This made it.
yes, I was interested to hear that you kind of decided to make the film for the 27 European countries, but I'm assuming that you still want Brits to see the film, and especially Leavers.
Yes.
Yeah. How are you going to go about getting Leavers to see this film?
Well, that's down to television. I mean, the interesting thing is, I was born in 1955. I grew up with 2 television channels, which later became 3. So you have a little bit in the lunchtime, and then it'd start again at 20 to 5 until midnight, and that was it. Yet, even with those limited broadcast hours, you still got World in Action, This Week, Panorama, who would often do political films, documentaries that were questioning whatever the government of the day was putting forward. And that's essentially what this film does. And the irony is that we now have 700 channels in this country. And I made a few phone calls to broadcasters, and they just wouldn't touch it with a barge pole. So it's the irony that I've had to go into commercial media where you have to pay money to come and see it. But eventually I want it to go on television. And that's why the more cinemas that go into... I sell films to the BBC and Channel 4 and ITV from time to time. And when you go there and pitch it, it's based on 2 things. it's how is it being received critically? Well, if the Mail and the Telegraph do review it, it will not be a good review, so I'll have problems there. But the other thing is, how's it gone down in cinemas? And obviously, if it's a box office hit, then which it never will be because it's sort of an art house film. But the very fact that I've now got it into 36 cinemas is something that the BBC and Channel 4 can't actually ignore. They might try to do it, but they have to put up. I know the BBC, almost as I was finishing this, they announced that they were doing something similar with Lord Adonis and a few other people. And then like 5 days later, they then cancelled it because they come under so much pressure, which I think is from the government. I have it's just an assumption. But it's editorial. So once it becomes acquisition, then they don't have that same problem, because all I have to do is get the 16 million to write a letter letters are much better than emails, a letter into the BBC, because the BBC has all this money as a license fee, and they have to try and make programming for everybody, for every kind of thing. So it will become more difficult for them to turn it down. And that's it. Once it's on television, then Brexiteers will watch it. The hard line will never change. But there'll be a lot of people. There are 2 people who work for me regularly. And I had one rule on the film, and that is that nobody who voted leave can work on it. And one person got quite cross with me, and suddenly staff got quite angry about it. He said, because he wanted to work on it. I never know why. And he said, David, you can't do that. He said, because that's illegal. He said, under the EU law, it says quite clearly. And then he stopped. But there's 2 of them who I like very much, and they're very good friends, and both of them are very keen to watch it, because they both admitted independently of each other that they weren't quite sure why they voted. It was sort of an instinctive thing. Both of them said they never discussed the facts. In fact, there's a very famous actor who lives around the corner here that voted leave. I'm still staggered by that, because when he found out I had a film playing here tonight, because I put it on Facebook, he said, I'm going to come and see it. And I said, no, you'll absolutely hate this film. So yeah, that's the hope. And there was a man he came to see me in Edinburgh, and after it finished, and he admitted quietly that he voted leave. And this had helped change his mind, but he'd sort of come to that conclusion before as well. Yes.
This might be a fantasy and totally not practical, but I'm just imagining this film being shown all through the summer, all over the country, in open air type settings, in towns, villages, everywhere. I mean, you're not going to get leavers coming to a cinema paying to see this film, but if you could just put it out there where people almost by accident walk past and see it.
Yes, it's much more complicated because there's all sorts of laws.
Yeah,
and particularly when a political film, they're not.
Really
the hardest part, this cinema is the only cinema in London taking it for a week. I've got a week in Nottingham, in Manchester, in Sheffield, in Bristol, in Horsham. I've got a week in Lewes, a tiny little market town in Sussex. They're all taking it for a week. And in London, one of them came up, a cinema chain I can't name, but came up with the most extraordinary excuse not to take it. First of all, they said all my ideas were somewhat old-fashioned. What do you mean? And they said, well, you'll just... The points you're putting in the film were the points 2 years ago. And I said, yes. He said, but things have moved on. I said, no, they haven't. I mean, we still have all the same problems. Nothing's changed. And then I was told that there's too much, Remain are getting too much publicity. And I said, where? I said, are you getting it from The Guardian? He never came back to me. So they didn't take it. And then somebody who works for that company rang me, obviously off the record, and said it's because the boss is scared. I mean, I have no idea what, but in this 2018, somebody's scared about putting out a film that 16 million. This is the thing that gets me. It's not like with a monster raving loony party who lost our deposit and people ignore us. As I say, 16 million is something that 18. There are 18 countries below us, or 20, that with a smaller population. 16 million. So who knows what kind of film do? I mean, but that's my dilemma, because at the end of the day, I knew that I would only, on the whole, I would be playing the film in cinemas to the very people who don't really need to see it. What was very interesting, Leslie Riddoch, who's probably one of the cleverest people I've ever met, and I didn't know her beforehand, and she's a very famous journalist in Scotland. When she saw an earlier cut of it, she wrote me an email and she said, there are so many things. She said, yes, I know a lot of the things. But she said, there's so many things in there that even I didn't know. So that's, at least I was hoping for that. Any more questions?
Can I just ask where you got your jacket?
No, I got this. My wife, as Ruth knows, she's employed her a lot back there, is a very successful costume designer, and everybody assumes that she chooses my clothes. But this is French. It's French workwear. But I did get her to find someone to start.
I think she was sideline and selling some of those to help subsidize.
Yes, we showed it at the EU Parliament, a not quite finished version in April. And I got on the train. It was very interesting. It was the first time I wore it, and there were people who obviously agreed with it and smiled or gave me the thumbs up. And then there were other people saying it was appalling, and the sooner we had nothing to do with Brussels, I could hear them muttering. And we were all just falling about with laughter because we were on a train going to Brussels. What were they doing? I didn't find out. Oh, and the greatest pleasure, when we showed it in this enormous room in the EU Parliament, right next to the chamber, they had to keep the lights on for some security reason. And so I sat on the stage, because we were operating it from the computer, with my editor and the writer. So they were all looking at a screen above me, and I could also see a screen over there. And 2 UKIP people came in. We'd been warned about them, and they had the UKIP badges on and all of that. They made a big song and dance about it, saying very loudly that it was going to be terrible. And finally, when the bit came on about the polls in England and the Queen acknowledging what they did in the Battle of Britain, these 2 guys, I could just see them, they got really angry. I don't know what it was in front of them, but they just tore it up and they threw it at the seats in front of them. They marched out. And that's when I knew I'd sort of won. Yes. Because that was the sum total of their argument, just to walk on.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's tremendous you've done this.
Yeah.
It's brilliant.
Yeah, well done.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.